So really, when I got this question, I feel that I'm going to be answering this question with asking more questions in return for consideration. And so if you're finding that you're in this type of situation, the initial question that I had was, when you say that this lower level tier 1 person is taking care of all of the lower level services, that's pretty vague. So what exactly does this look like? Is this lower level person meaning that they're just responding back to help desk issues, kind of as they pop up? So it's more of a reactive type of engagement. Or is this person going to be responsible for doing some proactive maintenance on the endpoints as well, like taking care of the patching, dealing with the security protection, dealing with the backup, the remediation? And the reason I'm asking this is I think, you're going to need to determine, what the roles and the responsibility of this internal IT person and what they're going to be tasked with. We have to figure that out first, I think, before you can start working on what your new pricing is going to be for this contract. Because when you're dealing with a co-managed prospect, and that's what that opportunity is now. This is no longer a standard managed services prospect for you. This is a co-managed IT services opportunity for you now. So because of that, you really do need to be explicit in terms of, what is that internal tech person going to be responsible for? And then what is your MSP team going to be responsible for? Assuming that this tier 1 person is just answering and doing some troubleshooting and answering random employee calls as they come in, like I can't print, my PC won't turn on, I can't connect to the network, I can't get to my email. What does that normal all-in bundle typically look like? So we're like, basically what I'm asking is, what's included in terms of your services, the software that you have deployed on the network, the devices that are covered in this all-in bundle, and so does your all-in price typically include the maintenance and the management of network devices, other infrastructure devices like servers, routers, switches, firewalls, in addition to the workstations? And with the tier 1 resource, typically they're just limited in scope to dealing with desktop and employee issues. I'm going to make an assumption here that the tier 1 really wouldn't be involved with maintaining servers, maintaining firewalls, and other infrastructure devices as well. So kind of looking at, what services do you perform then on the workstations? I'm assuming patching, but what are you doing from a security standpoint? What are you doing from an EDR, mail filtering, DNS filtering, password management, backup? And I'm asking this because, that gives you an idea of, what software are you going to be responsible for maintaining and supporting on the desktops? Or is that going to be the tier 1 person's job? Are they going to be responsible for taking care of the security aspects as well as the employees' problems that pop up as well? And then are you including any sort of professional consulting services in this price, like VCIO services in your monthly fee? I'm going to assume yes, you're going to want to, because again, if this is just a tier 1 help desk person, they're probably going to have limited knowledge in anything really beyond the workstation. They're not going to have that strategic high level visionary and be able to have those type of conversations as well. So VCIO consulting services would need to be factored into that pricing as well. And so I think really to help with that pricing question and how I should reprice my normal all in per device, I think a good approach to take away with is, first, defining what the new scope of the agreement is going to be, because we now have to take into account this internal resource. You're going to need to create a new contract with new statements of work that, again, clearly outlines what this internal person will be responsible for on a daily basis, and then what you and your MSP team is going to be responsible for, and what you guys will handle on a daily basis moving forward. And you want to make sure that, you explicitly, convey to them that anything that is not specifically mentioned in that contract or in that statement of work, that is going to be billable, and that's going to be a billable expense, whatever your time material rate is. And then once the scope of engagement is completed, go and then review it with your prospect, because you want to make sure that everyone is in agreement with the breakdown of the responsibilities. You don't want anything falling through the cracks because he thinks you're doing it and you think they're doing it. So you want to make sure that you get your prospects buy-in before we even start the pricing exercise. So they understand what they're asking of and expecting from you, and what you are expected to take on and manage for them. Then you would go into our pricing calculator, to kind of work out what that new pricing is going to be for your prospect. Again, once you've clearly defined what it is that you're going to be responsible for. So what you're just seeing here is a screenshot of our pricing calculator. I know I brought it up in past office hours. But for your new price, you are going to need to take into consideration, the software that you're going to be reinstalling back on a system. So we're looking at, your RMM. We're looking at whatever the security software is. I know you said backup is a separate agreement, but backup should always automatically be included in a security program, in a minimum viable program, especially if this is something you're going to be responsible for. Maybe they're going to come back and say, no, this internal guy is responsible for backup. That's fine. But if you're going to be responsible for the backup, we need to put those costs in there. We also need to determine, what the number and type of devices are that you're going to be responsible for. Like, are you going to be responsible for workstations, servers, firewalls, or are you just going to be responsible for the servers and the network gear? Then you need to outline the amount of time that we need to budget for each month, for the reactive labor. So kind of all that unexpected stuff that comes up in terms of help desk calls or alerts or notifications that you get from our RMM. You also need to budget how much preventative maintenance time you need to build in each month to do what you need to do on the firewalls and on the servers to keep them updated and protected and running optimally. And then if you are including consulting time or any sort of professional services, we want to make sure that we're scoping that as well and that we put that time into the document. And then the final column U, you want to make sure that you think about what your gross margin goals are going to be for your service contracts. As a point of comparison, if you're like, I don't know what my gross margins should be. Typically, best-in-class MSPs aim for a gross margin percentage of anywhere from 50 to 80% on their contracts. So just a kind of a little point there. But your goal should not be to try and be cheaper than that $150 device that you were charging them previously. Define what you're going to do. Go through the calculator. You might find you might be less. You might be the same, or you might end up charging more for that. You won't know until you kind of go through that whole exercise and you really define, what the roles and responsibilities are going to be for everyone involved. Personally, I feel if this customer is coming back to you because you said it was an ex-customer, an ex-client, what's the reason behind that? There must be a good reason for that. So I would actually use this as an opportunity to really reset expectations and use this as an opportunity to raise your prices a bit, especially because this is now considered a co-managed type of engagement. This is an entirely different service offering that you're doing now, that you're offering, that you're being involved with. And so I feel that there's an opportunity here to actually raise some prices. But again, you're not going to really know until you kind of go through this whole division of labor, define what it is, what the scope of the work is going to be, and then running it all through the pricing calculator.